Don, the indictment says you acknowledged children were afraid that parents couldn't get to their children. People thought this was a church shooting. Do you think you should have left?
Good question, yes.
Don, the indictment says that you protected the address. You protected the element of surprise. You kissed the organizer on camera. Do you consider yourself a participant or a journalist?
We're on your side, participating by saying don't share the location.
I want to thank everybody for their support. It truly means the world to me. I have no idea what's going on because obviously I haven't seen anything. I have spent my entire career covering the news. I will not stop now. In fact, there is no more important time than right now, this very moment, for a free and independent media that shines a light on the truth and holds those in power accountable. Again, I will not stop now. I will not stop ever. Last night, the DOJ sent a team of federal agents to arrest me in the middle of the night for something that I've been doing for the last 30 years, and that is covering the news. The First Amendment of the Constitution protects that work for me and for countless of other journalists.
But I'm going to start with an unpopular opinion, and that is calling Don Lemon a journalist is like calling AOC a free market capitalist. He is an activist. Look at his YouTube page. Here's a couple of titles of recent videos. 1, this is how to deal with ICE goons. 2, the viral MAGA idiot. 3, Don goes off on MAGA and ICE.
So is it your position
this is someone
that
who is not a journalist. He is an activist.
Is it your position that anybody who expresses opinions is not a journalist?
Well, even
is
if
your
he
position?
is, even if you
no,
agree,
I mean, well, let's deal with
the
accusation that you're making that he is not a
I
journalist.
think he
it's
shed the
important
veneer of being a journalist a long time ago.
Because we have in the press a lot of different kinds of journalists. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the New York Post, they've got editorial boards where people are expressing opinions all the time. They're not journalists?
I think that Don Lemon is not a journalist.
But why?
But
is it because he's expressed? Is it because in his view, in your view, he's expressing an opinion?
If you believe that he is a journalist,
but why?
I still think that he is wrong in this instance.
But you're not saying.
I just don't. I think he's an activist.
Well, but you just don't.
What's up, family? So we got to talk about this wild meltdown that the mainstream liberal media is having over Don Lemon getting arrested, as you guys can see. And I'm talking full-on panic mode. They damn near lighting candles for this man like he's a political prisoner or something. But let's keep it a buck. Don Lemon ain't being arrested for journalism, all right? He ain't in trouble for doing his job as a reporter. What's really going on here is he's being held accountable for activism, not journalism. And that's why they so pressed about it, as you see from Abby Phillip on CNN here in this debate. And when you look at it, they crying all on TV and Twitter like somebody stole their dog, because this right here, this is what you call a mask off moment. All these people you see pretending to be journalists, they're not reporting the news. They out here pushing an agenda, and they activists with a press badge. You know what I'm saying? So once you understand that, everything else starts making sense, because this ain't just about Don Lemon as a person. It's about what he represents. See, these so-called journalists, they losing their damn minds because one of their own is finally being held to the same standard the rest of us is held to. So they mad because the little club they've been in, where they get to say whatever, twist the facts and call it news, that club is getting exposed. And now the whole game they've been playing in the media is starting to unravel. Now, here's where it gets even deeper, because they out here screaming freedom of speech, right? And like this man got locked up for just saying something. Talking about First Amendment, this First Amendment, that, like he's a victim of censorship. But if you really break this down all the way, that's not what this case is even about. What Don Lemon's being charged for is, according to the Department of Justice, don't got a whole lot to do with what he said on air. It got more to do with what he did, his actions, not just his words, specifically what he did that allegedly violated the First Amendment rights of other people. Not his own. Like, you can't cry about your free speech if what you did trampled on the other person's right to practice their own religion freely and peacefully. And that's what at the center of this whole thing, this is what it's about. Not some imaginary war on journalism. Because of course the media ain't gonna tell you that. They want you to know they don't want you to know the real reason behind these changes. They out here trying to spin the narrative. They're trying to shape public opinion before anything even goes to trial. And that's called rigging the game. Convicting people in a court of public opinion when letting them have due process, right? And is the Democrat Party good for due process and advocating for that? Well, let it play out the same way when it's one of your own. And that's called stacking the deck, right? And they know exactly what they're doing when it comes to rigging the game and stacking the deck. They want you emotional. They want you distracted. They want you to make it seem like if Don Lemon get arrested and can get arrested, then any journalist could be next. And that's straight up manipulation. So now that he's been released on no bail, which I don't know why, Don Lemonade is out here walking around again. And it's on us to set the record straight because clearly the media is not going to do it. And they too busy running defense for one of their own. So now conservatives, hell, anybody who believes in truth over spin, we got the job of actually explaining to people what this man is really being charged with, because not what MSNBC is saying, now known as MS Now, not what Twitter blue checks, people with Twitter, blue checks on Twitter is crying about, but what's actually in the indictment. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to break it all down piece by piece so nobody gets fooled by the noise.
You just know it's not a reason. When he's in the church and he's cheering them on and he's saying, this is what you do, this is what you do. You have to make people uncomfortable.
That was his interpretation of what they were doing.
He was pointing out that people were scared and afraid and
practically
taking
That's what journalists do. They observe.
No, he was cheering it on.
How was he cheering it on?
This is the beginning of what's going to happen here. When you violate people's due process, when you pull people off the street, you start dragging them and hurting them and not abiding by the Constitution, when you start doing all of that, people get upset and angry. And if you remember what the Civil Rights Movement was about these very kinds of protests. There's nothing in the Constitution that tells you what time you can protest. You can protest at any time. That's the whole point of it, is to disrupt, it's to make uncomfortable. And that's what they're doing. And that's what I believe when I say everyone has to be willing to sacrifice something. You have to make people uncomfortable in these times. If you see how uncomfortable people uncomfortably.
If he's pointing out what's happening right in front of his face.
These people are scared and afraid, and that's why
were they not?
Protest.
He's interpreting what the protesters were doing.
How is he cheering it on when he's telling you what's happening? That's part of what we do.
Did you see the parts where he was?
He also told them,
Did you see the parts where he was
I'm glad that you're doing this.
Where he was interviewing the parishioners? Did you see those parts?
Yeah, and I also saw when the pastor asked him to leave, and he refused to leave for 7 minutes.
I didn't see a single moment where Don Lemon conspired with the others to further this crime. He was there reporting the entire time.
Advance.
So how did he further that?
He admitted that he knew about it.
That has nothing to do with that.
Journalists are often told in advance about protests. That's what happens.
So if you know someone is going to be shot and killed and you go to cover it, you're not complicit.
Well, hold on.
If you cover it,
hold on.
Canberra, yes.
Murder and protests are not
the president just arrested 2 journalists. Now I think that he's almost in double down mode. I thought he was in de-escalate mode. Now he's having journalists arrested.
Well, he arrested journalists for committing crimes and then filming themselves committing crimes and then talking and admitting on camera to committing those crimes. So, you know, just because you say you're a journalist doesn't mean he violated the FACE Act in 18 U.S. Code Section 241, among others.
You think he used force? Yeah, well, look, just because you know the number of the statute, bravo, you probably know the acronym.
I just read the indictment.
But they also want to throw the Ku Klux Klan Act after him. The indictment, as a lawyer, let me tell you, not an impressive document. And you should read into why that felony complaint that they tried originally got signed. Well, no, they're worried. They're worried about the application. They're worried about the application.
They like Don Lemon.
How did Don Lemon or Georgia Fort use force or intimidation? How did they use force or intimidation? Fundamental part of the mens rea of that statute. How?
Chris, I think it's laudable that you want to defend your friend. Don Lemon said on camera that the purpose of the event that he was actively participating in was to traumatize people. And he said that is good. That is what that is for. He went in there. He admitted on camera. You're believing the woman who organized it for some reason. You're not believing Don Lemon, your own friend. He said that he knew a secret. He knew about what they were doing in advance. He wouldn't say it on camera. He served coffee to his fellow activists in there. He violated the FACE Act. He conspired against rights. And this is a very important point. You cannot claim First Amendment protections while you actively violate the First Amendment rights of others. My friend, Chris Bell, his wife, Joan Bell, was in prison for 27 months over this for an abortion.
Now, here's what's wild because all these liberal media journalists out here acting like Don Lemon is the second coming of Martin Luther King, talking about how passionate they are about him being innocent. They crying on air, talking like this man is victim of some grand injustice. But guess what? Turns out they ain't even read the damn indictment. Yeah, the same document that actually lays out what this man is being charged with. Like, how you gonna run defense for somebody, do whole TV segments defending them, and you didn't even read the official charges? And that's like arguing in court without ever seeing the evidence. And you just in there yelling not guilty off of vibes and Twitter hashtags. And the whole thing blew up in their face when you saw it with Abby Phillip, who always want to be out here trying to act like she's the hall monitor of political truth, try to pull a fast one and fact check a conservative guest you guys saw live on air. And she really thought she was doing something, trying to hit him with that smug, well, actually type of energy. She always does this when she knows she's wrong. Well, actually, but the twist is she was dead wrong. She tried to fact check the guest just to end up getting fact checked herself on her own damn show. It's embarrassing because if you really look at it, how you gonna be the referee and still fumble the rule book? That's like calling a foul in a game and you don't even know how to rule. You don't even know the rules to it, and you just whistling for attention at that point. But what this is what happens when you're more focused on protecting the narrative than actually reporting facts. And these people are not reading documents, they're reading vibes. You see Chris Cuomo and his ignorance, and he out here defending Don Lemon like it's a group project, and he's the only one who brought snacks. And now they all fail in the test because nobody did the reading. It's all performance. It's all performative. They ain't journalists. They just clout chasers, popularity chasers with earpieces and lightning teams with lightning or lighting, I should say. And this little moment right here when you guys seen Abby try to fact check and got clown with the actual facts. That's exactly why people don't trust the mainstream liberal media or media anymore. Because instead of telling the truth, the boring, uncomfortable, messy truth, they out here trying to play lawyer, in this case, Chris Cuomo, judge, and PR team all in one. And they look dumb every time they get caught slipping. So don't let it fool you because they mad. They're not mad about injustice. That's what I wanted to say. They're not mad about injustice. They mad they can't control the story anymore. It's about control. So I want you guys to check this out.
Is he a protester or a journalist? And the indictment obviously suggested that he posted himself at the main door. He prevented people from exiting, but ultimately
No, it does not say that.
The indictment
says that protesters did that. It names the other people. It did not say that Don did that.
Look, I just want to respond because you accused me of mischaracterizing the indictment. This is actually a quote from the indictment that Lemon posted himself at the main door of the church where he confronted some congregants and physically obstructed them as they tried to exit, challenging them with facts about U.S. immigration policy. So that is what the indictment says. I'm not stating whether I agree with that, but that's what the indictment says. So look,
they also characterized him as intimidating a pastor who he was calmly interviewing. So I think we also have to, the characterization of him conducting journalism is also something to be questioned.
She's so damn ignorant. So combative because the simple fact is, the wildest part is she didn't read the damn indictment, Abby Phillips. She literally read the indictment to her. Like, if you look at it, Abby Phillips didn't read the indictment at all, and now they got to fall back on the oldest trick in the liberal media playbook, the race card, identity politics. When they don't know what they're talking about, when the facts ain't lining up with the narrative they're trying to push, when it's looking real bad for their hero, they just slam the race card on the table like it's Uno. Reverse, draw 4. Suddenly it's not about what he did, it's about who he is. Like, oh, he's black, so it must be racism. Nah, bro, it's just accountability. This is just accountability. And these folks don't care about the actual charges. They don't care that Don Lemon literally recorded himself doing the exact thing he's being accused of. They don't care that he basically got on camera and said, yep, I was there, I helped, and this is how we do it. And here's how we do it. Like, this man dry snitched on himself with HD footage and perfect lighting, but somehow this is supposed to be a setup, a political attack, a hate crime. When the man did it to his damn self, ain't nobody tell him go and ambush a church, a place of worship. So you can miss me with that because you can't scream injustice when the man hit record on his own crime like it's a damn blog. But nah, instead of dealing with the facts, we got to hear from every woke commentator who thinks yelling racism is the same thing as making an argument. And you know the type, the ones rocking blonde lace fronts, sipping Starbucks, calling everything systematic oppression. They out here saying Don Lemon getting arrested is somehow about white supremacy. And that blows my mind because it's like, bruh, the man admitted to the crime on tape. And how you gonna blame racism for something he told on himself? That ain't racism. That's just cause and effect. But this is what they do. This is how they keep the outrage machine going. Because the moment they actually look at the case and realize, oh wait, he might have really did that, the whole victim narrative falls apart and they can't let that happen. Because without the race angle, they don't got a leg to stand on. So instead of saying, yeah, he messed up, they try to turn it into a social justice thing. If you realize with these Democrats, everything turns into a damn social justice thing. And it gets divisive and it gets rhetoric and it's all anger and it's all division and it's all destruction. They're like bad kids that just want to destroy shit when shit don't go their way. And this ain't about color or his skin. This is about what he chose to do. And it tells a lot about his character. And what he got caught doing tells a lot about his character as well and how much of he is as a person. The same way I used the example before. Don Lemon got married in a church. Yes, he is that way, the LGBTQ, whatever. He's that way. But whatever you do in his bedroom, that's him. If he loves a man, he loves a man. But my point is, he got married in a church. So if somebody ambushed his wedding in a church and called it their First Amendment, I don't think he would actually like that. Because he will actually be standing for his First Amendment being violated because someone used their First Amendment to shit on his First Amendment. But it's okay because it's not happening to him. And that's just wrong. It's my point. But let's check this out. This is what I mean by the race card.
We need to remind ourselves of the racial element of this. There is a reason why I think Donald Trump not only picked independent journalists, but black journalists in particular. Clearly, we know there's no love lost between Don Lemon and Donald Trump, that he's been very critical of the president. The president they've gone back and forth. But if we go back and undo all the layers of all of this, it was black journalists that were really at the forefront of calling Donald Trump out, from the birtherism movement throughout a lot of the things that they saw early before the rest of the press really picked up on some of the things that concerned a lot of black journalists. Hello, me, who also called out Donald Trump in 2017. And the reason why I think he picked these particular journalists is being independent. You don't have the backing of a CNN. You don't have the backing of a big network. The other part of it, too, is that if you can make them the face of this issue that is happening in Minneapolis, we know that given some of the racial issues that we have in this country, it is likely to have a lot less sympathy because they are journalists, one, and people hate the press, and two, because they're black. And so I do think that that's an important part of this, especially given the president's own language when it comes to anti-DEI and making black people the face of woke, and all that we've heard from this administration. All of this is combined together and meant to drum up a certain sentiment against these journalists so that people are supporting their own rights being eroded because of who they think it's happening to.
People are, hold on, let me run that back. I don't like Jamil Hill. She's very divisive. She seems very miserable, and she's always talking about division. And I'm all for unity. I don't care the race, the color, but she always go down this race card, specifically her.
Who they think it's happening to. Who they eroded because of who they think it's happening.
People's rights are being eroded because of who they think is happening to. So, Don Lemon, what does people's rights have to do with being eroded if he actually did the crime himself and then self-indicting himself with him recording and going live on YouTube, calling himself a reporter in the name of being an activist? And if you're a reporter of the news, I mean, you don't sit there and know about something in an operation in secrecy. You just reporting the facts and what's there. See, this right here is this is what comes down when you have low IQ, right? Because we always get this from Jamil Hill. Let's just call it what it is. Every time she jumps into a political conversation, it's like she brings nothing to the table except race. That's it. Like her entire contribution to any topic is just finding out what to say that is racist and then dipping off. No legal logic, no factual breakdown, no actual agreement with the real situation. Just vibes and victimhood, running into the victim Olympics. And that's her whole playbook. Honestly, it's tiring, it's draining, it's played out, and I'm done hearing the same song a million times already. And look, you'll notice none of these people, not Jamil Hill, not Abby Phillips, not the woke peanut gallery on Twitter, none of them are actually engaging with the legal question that's sitting at the center of this whole case. The Department of Justice laid out what they are looking at. The actual charge is whether or not Don Lemon conspired, keyword, conspired, with a group of other protesters to interfere with the First Amendment rights of churchgoers. That's the actual question. Not his opinion, not his politics, not his skin color. It's about whether he teamed up with other people to stop folks from practicing their religion freely and without harassment. That's the legal standard. But nah, instead of addressing that, they start yelling racism like it's a smoke bomb, and then they try to distract, deflect, and dodge because if they actually sat down and looked at the facts, it would have forced them to admit this ain't a free speech issue. This ain't a journalist being targeted, and this damn sure ain't some civil rights movement. It's a basic legal case about whether somebody helped plan something illegal. And that's it. You take race out of the conversation for 2 seconds, and it's clear as day, but they don't want that. They don't want people to see through a neutral lens. They need to keep the emotional manipulation going, and they need the outrage, because if they lost that, they got nothing left. And this is where you can't be objective if your emotions is trumping logic. And it blows my mind because she's talking about other people's rights being invoked because of what they don't like or how they perceive things. But you have to realize Donald Trump took on a slander of majority of things, from charges being put on him for being individuals weaponizing the government politically because they don't like him, because they're exposed. He's exposing the fraud, waste, and abuse. He's stopping the illegals when it comes to the Democrats having their voter base using illegals, undocumented immigrants, to be in this country, so they have a voter base so they can stay in control, because that's the only thing they can stand on. Not to mention that the census, right? They count the bodies. They don't care if you're legal or not. But when they go around every 10 years, the census, it determines how many seats according to that state, congressman, congresswoman. So we all know that the Democratic Party is good on making sure that they position themselves to have the majority of seats so they can make the majority of decisions, so it goes in their favor. They don't care about the damn people, we the people, where they basically exploit and tax us to our eyeballs and think that's a way of living in the name of giving everything free to illegals to cater to them to stay in control and stay in power. Because the Democratic Party basically chooses party over people. And when you look at it for what it is, I mean, it's type obvious on the play here. And then the race situation, they want to enrage you so it distracts you from the very thing that should be talked about. In this case with Don Lemon, the legality of things, and also the facts that Trump isn't targeting no journalists, but you have to also understand these mainstream liberal medias networks, CNN, MSNBC, now known as MS Now, ABC, they slandered this man name before the facts came out. They demonized him. They lied on him. They said in January 6th that he was actually inciting violence when he was just saying we have to stand in peace and walk up the Capitol Hill and voice their rights and protest peacefully. They made it as though they changed it up. AI changed it or whatever and changed Donald Trump words. It's a whole nine when it came to BBC, the network that he sued. So if anything, the media came after him, and he's holding the individuals accountable that lied to him. And I'm sure anyone else would when it gets to that point. That's why he sued BBC. But in this case, this has nothing to do with Donald Trump, because Don Lemon did this on his own ambushing a place of worship, and then the pastor asked him to leave, and he still stood there saying that it's his First Amendment, and don't you think people should be able to voice their First Amendment in the middle of a church service? You're violating someone else. You are violating that pastor's First Amendment and the people in church, the kids that were traumatized, all in the name of protesting, being paid protesters, and sit there and to be agents of chaos, right? And that's how far it got. And if you want to be technical, since we pulling a race card with Jamil Hill right here on Donald Trump targeting black folks, I find it a hard time with that because Donald Trump has pointed several policies and actions from his presidency that he and his supporters help black Americans. I don't think someone that really is against black people would help black people as giving a lot of money to HBCUs and even in areas of the criminal justice reform, funding historically black colleges, HBCUs, what I just mentioned, economic opportunity programs. So if you want to look at it in plain English, he signed the First Step Act. That is a criminal justice reform law that reduced some federal prison sentences and expanded early release and rehabilitation programs, which ended up helping many black inmates because they were disproportionately represented in federal prisons. His administration permanently funded HBCUs at higher levels and simplified how they receive federal support. Before the COVID pandemic, black unemployment reached record lows during his term. Though economists debated how much of that was due to his policies versus broader economic trends are already in motion, he also created opportunity zones, which gave tax incentives for investment in low-income areas, including many black communities. Though critics argue that benefits were mixed, right? Supporters say this move boosted jobs, education funding, and second chance opportunities. And then you got critics saying the impact was uneven and sometimes overstated. So when you look at it, it does depend on your political viewpoint. But we know that these Democrats, is being very hypocritical as they are, they have this Trump derangement syndrome. They just don't like Trump for Trump, but they're not saying the very things that's factual on paper that he actually done for the black community. So it's ignorant for this grown black woman to sit here and just make it a race thing when it has nothing to do with it, because the facts is there. Just look for it. Just do your research. Don't take my word for it. And don't take her ignorance for it. So now, when you look at all of that, I want you guys to go into the next clip and see another thing in regards to they're trying to play this race card and all of this on CNN.
Were they a part of a conversation where they had advanced knowledge of your intentions for the protest? Were they involved in the coordination, planning, or execution of any of it?
So as I said in the beginning, neither Don nor Georgia are activists, protesters, or organizers in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
So as I said during the video, it was a clandestine operation, which meant no one other than the organizers had any information about where we were even going. I gave out the address right before we left. And I told them I'm not answering any more questions. When we get there, you'll see where we are. They had no details. They didn't know about David Easterwood. They didn't know what was going to happen once we actually got to the location. Don and Georgia had no advanced knowledge. They had to show up like everyone else at the Cub Foods parking lot, which was on the flyer, and learn the address at the last second before we all got in our vehicles and drove there. So they did what journalists do, which is to document.
Flashback. Into Minneapolis a little bit ago and did some reconnaissance on the ground, speaking to an organization there that's gearing up for resistance and protest. I've been pleasantly surprised to see the community coming together. Diverse community. If you see this, when we first pulled up, we're like, wait a minute, which operation are we at? And as it turns out, because we're like, well, this is kind of MAGA coded, right? Saw the American flag or whatever, but these are resistance protesters. They're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up, and it's Takima Armstrong, and she has been doing this since George Floyd, Dante Wright, and others, where they surprise people, catch them off guard, and hold them to account. And so that's what we're doing here. And then after we do this operation, you'll see it live. And these operations are surprise operations. Again, I can't tell you where. So they're getting the operation together. Again, this is an operation that is a secret, that they invited folks out. Can't tell you what is going to happen, but you're going to watch it live unfold here on the Don Lemon Show. There are for this reason, it may look like MAGA coded, but there's a reason they have so many white people here. I'm just going to be honest. It's because of the operation that they're doing today. It's important to have allies, as they said, white allies here. So that is what I could say. I turned our camera off of them because they're giving some critical information here. But there we go. Everybody's ready to go.
It's like these people forget the internet exists. Like we ain't walking around with receipts in our pockets at this point. Do they not realize there's video evidence floating around that straight up contradicts every single thing they say on TV? Like, bro, it's on camera. You can literally watch it. This ain't a mystery. This ain't speculation. This is visible proof that Don Lemon knew exactly what was going down. Not only did he know, but as we saw in this video, this man went out his way to conceal what they were about to do. Like, bro was moving like he was on a mission. This wasn't just showing up. This was deliberate, calculated, and caught in 4K. And if you break this down real simple for folks in the back, because I know the media out here trying to confuse everybody with legal jargon, the charge from the Department of Justice, like I said, is called conspiracy against rights. Sounds fancy, but it really means the government's trying to prove two main things. One, that there was an agreement between two or more people to do something illegal. Not just talking, not just protesting, but planning something that violates someone else's rights. And two, the goal of that agreement was to interfere with a federal right. And in this case, the federal right is the freedom of religion, the First Amendment right to worship. So let me translate that even further. If you and a group of people get together and say, yo, we're going to stop these folks from practicing their faith, we're going to disrupt that, and then you go do it, that's illegal. That's not free speech. That's not protest. That's called a federal crime. And if there's video showing you knew what was about to happen, help cover it up, and joined in anyway, that's called a conspiracy, my guy. So you don't got to be the mastermind. You don't got to be part of the plan. That's it. And based on the footage that we just seen, the facts that are already public, yeah, it's real obvious Don Lemon wasn't some bystander who just stumbled into a situation. He was in it all the way. And the media knows this, and they just hope you never actually look into it. But we did, as you guys can see, and the facts, they don't lie, which I'm here to basically show the truth and uncover the lies.
Is a pastor here, and he also serves as the director of the field office for ICE in St. Paul. How? David Easterwood.
Are you sure that he's a...
Yes, City's Church, yes. And that's why we're here, demanding justice for Renee Good and letting them know that this will not stand. They cannot pretend to be a house of God while harboring someone who is directing ICE agents to wreak havoc upon our community and who killed Renee Good, who almost killed a 6-month-old baby. Enough is enough.
See, if this was really about protesting or making a statement, they would have done it outside the church. Like, use common sense for 2 seconds, because if your real goal is to be heard or bring attention to something, cool. Pull up on the sidewalk, hold a sign, chant all you want. But that ain't what they did. They ain't just show up during off hours. They ain't trying to talk to the pastor during his office hours. Nah, they pulled up during the service in the middle of worship, and that was the whole point. The goal was to disrupt, right? That's what Nikema Armstrong said. That's what you heard Don Lemon say. Disrupt people while they were exercising their First Amendment right. Their right to freely practice religion. That's not random. That's not spontaneous. That's a targeted act. And it's clear as day that Don Lemon knew that was what was about to happen. So let's not play dumb, because the man joined the agreement. He was in on it based on his own words, which are still floating around the internet, by the way. And he basically confirmed that he knew exactly what was coming. He knew what they were about to do, and he rode with it. That's conspiracy. And if you're really trying to understand what makes it a crime, here's the key: an overt act has to happen in furtherance of the conspiracy. And you know what that overt act was? Don Lemon literally doing anything he could to keep the crowd, the cameras, and the authorities in the dark about what was about to go down. That's what you call maintaining operational secrecy, making sure nobody knew so the plan could go off without a hitch. That's not journalism. That's not reporting. That's straight up criminal activism. So when Don Lemon started acting like an undercover operative instead of a journalist, that's when he crossed the line. He wasn't there to cover a story. He was there to make sure the operation of disruption went through smoothly. And the wildest part is the man is so bold or so honestly just dumb that he literally went live and said, "I'm surprised the police haven't showed up." Like, bro, if what you were doing was legal, why would you say that? Why would that be the thought that pops in your head during an event? Because deep down, he knew it wasn't legal. He knew it wasn't legal. And that's just was the truth of it. Not to mention, he knew they were violating people's rights, and he knew he was a part of it. He just thought being a journalist would give him cover like a get out of jail free card. But nah, that's not how it works. Not when you're helping carry out a crime.
He's not in cahoots. He is not in cahoots. He wants an exclusive. That is not in cahoots.
Let me tell you what part of the problem is. It's a conspiracy. You don't have to know what any of your co-conspirators are doing as long as you commit an act.
How are they co-conspirators? They are there to protest. Don is there to report.
Right.
I have done this thousands of times in my career.
Hold on. What they're alleging is not that they were protesting, that they were on private property.
No, they're...
They've got the church is private property.
Mark, have you ever seen a no trying sign at a church? They welcome everybody. Hold on. Hold on.
Can I tell you something?
You are allowed to walk in a church. Anybody can walk in a church. Don Lemon has a right to walk in a church. If they tell him to leave, then maybe he has to leave. If they tell him when he's recording, but you are allowed to walk in a church, period. I read all of the allegations that supposedly make him a co-conspirator, and it's insulting. They're lies. They know it. It's not true.
But then again, you keep going back to lies. You don't get to
they put it all here. They put it all in here.
But the federal judge doesn't start looking at it.
I'm not talking
second guess the grand jury.
What I'm talking about is you got a Department of Justice that is trying to get Don Lemon, is trying to make this case, is trying to argue that if you cover a protest that Donald Trump's administration doesn't like, then we're not looking at you as a journalist. By covering it, we're going to make you a protester and we're going to prosecute you. They are trying to intimidate they're trying to intimidate the press. If a reporter cannot report on what is going on of national importance and be there chronicling it, then freedom of the press is dead. And when freedom of the press is dead, democracy dies.
Family, I'm not hearing that bull crap. Because Don Lemon is just stupid, honestly. This man said everything, did everything, all on live stream, just handing out evidence like free samples at Costco. So, like, you literally crossed every single line from journalism into criminal activism, and you had the nerve to broadcast it like it was content for your subscribers. And he's so clueless because he didn't even realize he was documenting his own downfall in real time. That's how far gone he is. He recorded it all thinking he was making a statement, not realizing he was handing the Department of Justice a case on a silver platter. So if you really go through it piece by piece, because I want people to understand that this is not some made up BS. This ain't political theater. This ain't one of those stretch the truth situations. The media wants you to think that because they're invested in protecting Don Lemon, as you can see. Not because they care about the facts, but because they're not journalists either. They're activists masquerading as journalists, and they feel personally attacked because Don Lemon is the first liberal media figure to get caught red-handed doing criminal activism under the disguise of press freedom. And that's why they're panicking. That's why they sound so desperate. And you got to understand this. Real journalists ain't worried about this case. Because if you're actually doing your job, just reporting, not participating, not coordinating, not helping to cover stuff up, you ain't got nothing to worry about. The Department of Justice ain't coming for you. But the reason for Abby Phillip, Chris Cuomo, Stephen A. Smith, and all the whole liberal media circle out here defending Don like it's their brother on trial, because they know deep down they're part of the same machine. That's why they mad. That's why they feel threatened, because they know they play the same activist role behind the scenes, and they ain't mad because they're journalists. They're mad because their boy got caught. So if you want me to break it down exactly why the Department of Justice is on Don Lemon's neck right now, here's what they're looking at. There was a pre-service gathering caught on camera. That's planning. There was clear coordination. They moved together, entered the sanctuary together. They were references to a planned operation. That's conspiracy language. Don Lemon specifically chose not to reveal details of what was about to go down. That's called aiding operational secrecy. He helped guarantee the disruption was successful by keeping it low key, not exposing it as a journalist should. He participated in the crime knowingly. That's not neutral coverage. That's active involvement. And the protest was timed perfectly to interfere with worship during an actual Sunday service, not outside, not before or after, but during. That's intentional. And then they choose this church specifically because one of the pastors allegedly worked with ICE. So this wasn't a random protest. It was politically targeted. The whole point was to say, you don't get to worship if we don't like your politics. That's a direct violation of the First Amendment. And Don Lemon, he was right there for all of it. Live streaming, dropping little lines about secrecy, staying inside the building while the disruption happened, adding commentary like he agreed with it all. And he wasn't just observing, he was co-signing it. That is not journalism. That is not how professional reporters operate. You can cover chaos without being the chaos. So we've seen actual journalists cover riots, protests, unrest. And you know what they don't do? They don't help plan it. They don't keep secrets to help it succeed. They don't aid and abet the people breaking the law. They cover it. That's the line. That's the difference. And Don Lemon crossed it. Full stop. So no, this ain't about an attack on journalism. This ain't the government going after the First Amendment. This is the law catching up to a dude who thought he could act like an activist and hide behind a press pass, and the media knows it, which is why they're dodging the legal side completely, because you heard him say, I don't want to talk about what a federal judge had to say. They don't want to talk about the actual evidence. That's what he's basically saying. They don't want to mention the live stream. They don't want to mention the coordination. They just keep crying racism, free speech, journalists under attack, all smoke, no facts. And look, I'm not even getting into the FACE Act stuff because that's a whole separate thing that deals more with physical obstruction, like blocking people from entering or leaving the building, which, yeah, that's bad too. But honestly, that's the side quest. The main event is the conspiracy against rights charge. That's where they really got Don Lemon. And all the evidence is in his live stream. It's in his live stream. It's not some secret, hard to find footage. It's public. And the jury's going to get to see it. And at the end of the day, that's the real question. Was Don Lemon there to report the protest, or was he there to participate in it? And he helped succeed by keeping it hitting, coordinated, and control. Because if it's the second one, if he was helping, facilitating, covering up, then guess what? That's not journalism. That's conspiracy. That's a federal crime. And that's what these so-called journalists don't want to talk about any of this, because it blows up their whole little game. This ain't about truth. It's about protecting the narrative. But the truth is already on tape. So now let's get to Don Lemon standing on top of his ignorance, as I want you guys to see.
No, I am not going to bend the knee to this administration. I am not going to put on liars and insurrection deniers and election deniers. I'm not going to give my platform to those people. I'm not going to put people on television and give them a platform, people who come on just to lie and to offend and to insult people. It's insulting to the American people. This is not folly. It's not funny. This is not a game. If you look at any tyranny or any autocracy any sort of dictatorship, the first thing they do is they get rid of the media. They try to silence the media. Ask Turkey about that, Erdogan. Ask Iran about that. Ask any country that has lost its way, that has been overtaken by a dictator. They get rid of the press first. And so we need to start standing up. And I got to say that from what I've heard, I haven't had a chance to see it. I've heard that my former colleagues at CNN all came out pretty unanimously, pretty strongly to support me. I understand. I believe that CNN released a statement. I've heard that CNN released a statement. Thank you very much. I have no animus for CNN. I have no animus for anyone, but I tell the truth.
Apparently in 2026, this is what counts as journalists now. Like seriously, Don Lemon is a journalist. That's the bar now. That's where we at. Bro, if that's journalism, then I'm a journalist, right? Because your cousin with a podcast is a journalist. Anybody with a mic, a webcam, an opinion is not officially a member of the press. And that's how far they watered it down to. They watered it down to that. And that's the irony. The media is out here defending Don Lemon like they're pretending or protecting this sacred, noble title of journalist. But in doing so, they're actually destroying what it means to be a journalist. Like, let's be real. Maybe once upon a time, Don Lemon was a legit journalist, right? I don't know. Like, when that was, maybe back when Obama had a BlackBerry. But what he does now, that's not journalism. That's commentary. That's activism. And the fact that the media keeps calling him a journalist, it's not about accuracy. It's about protection. It's about building a legal shield around people like Don so they can continue to do whatever they want and push whatever narrative they want and then cry press freedom when someone calls them out. And that's what this really is about. And that's why the media can't be straight with you, because they will never tell the truth about what Don Lemon actually did, because telling the truth threatens their whole setup. It threatens their access, their power, their ability to manipulate the public under the label of journalism. And they're never going to be okay with one of their own getting arrested, even if the receipts are clear, even if the live stream shows him doing everything that the Department of Justice says he did, because the moment accountability touches one of them, the rest of them got to look in the mirror and they can't handle that. And look, some folks on the right are panicking too, and they sound just as lost. They're out here like, oh no, we can't support this because now the Democrats are going to come after us. Like, bro, where have you been? They already been doing that. You act like this is going to open the door, bro. The door been wide open. Democrats already went after the January 6th journalists, the ones who were just documenting what happened. They already went after people recording protests outside abortion clinics. They're already using these tools. So stop acting like this is something new. And that's what blows my mind about some conservatives, because they live in this fantasy where they think we will still be operating on mutual rules. Like, oh, well, we shouldn't do this or they'll do it to us. They already been doing it to you. You don't just want to admit it. You just scared to fight back, and that's how you lose, by playing fair in a rigged game. It's rigged. So again, I'm bringing back full circle. The reason the media is lying to you, the reason they're covering for Don Lemon, is because the narrative matters more than the truth. In 2026, the media is agenda first, truth last. Don Lemon getting held accountable is a threat to everything they stand for, because it proves that this little game they've been playing, hiding activism behind journalism, can actually come with real consequences, and they're scared. Because if what Don Lemon did isn't journalism, and it's clearly not, and then every one of these so-called journalists who've been playing activists on camera has to start looking over their shoulder. That's why they're all jumping to defend him. Not because he didn't do it, not because he's innocent, but because if he gets convicted, it sets a dangerous precedent for them. But here's the thing. Real journalists aren't afraid of this. Like I say, real journalists know how to do their job without participating in crimes. Real journalists don't need to coordinate with protest organizers, don't need to kiss the ringleader on camera, and don't need to manipulate coverage in real time to support illegal acts. Real journalists show up, document, tell the truth, and go home. So if these people were actually journalists, they'll be cool. They wouldn't feel threatened, but they're not. But that's why they're freaking out, right? Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Drop a comment, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with someone who still believes the mainstream media is telling the truth, because trust me, they're not, and we just proved it. Love you guys. Peace.